beautiful Arizona morning walk. Sun is coming over the horizon over there. It is awesome. I will tell you, there is no better place, in my humble opinion, to live than Arizona, because it is the best of worlds and the best of worlds. Like, everybody's like, oh, it gets so hot in the summer. It is so much better in the heat, and the dry heat is a thing. It makes a big difference. It is so much better in the heat than it is shoveling snow coming in. Your pants are always wet because you're like, I've done a lot of traveling, and in the teaching days, I'll say the early teaching days when I used to teach in classroom environments, and no place like home. Love Arizona. So that being said, I threw a post on Twitter this morning. Greetings, El Salvador. I threw a post on Twitter this morning asking for some ideas to talk about on the morning walk. And while we're waiting for folks to join in, looks like there's about 23 people here so far. Someone posted, tell us some stories of outages that you've caused. And I was like, oh man, if I could summarize those in a nutshell. And it's funny because as I started walking, I was like, well, good grief. I mean, there's a lot. And so there, so you're probably gonna laugh as you hear these, but I tell you these more so as a learning opportunity for you, because it's always better to learn from somebody else's mistakes than to make those mistakes yourself. So let me actually talk about outage number 1, which was probably, let's say 3 days ago, because it happens a lot. Now I'm going to classify outage as things that did not go according to plan. I'll say that. So 2 days ago. So let me give you the situation that it's just fresh in my mind. That's why it was the first one that came to my mind. 2 days ago, we were planning to actually change a whole bunch of sites in Texas. So many of you know, I started a managed service provider about 10 years ago. It's up to about 40 people now that does exactly the same stuff that I teach, implements networks. We go beyond that into cloud services and all that. So one of the things that we did about a few years back was we started implementing our own internet service. Hey, Umair, hello. So we implemented our own internet service that evolved to become a service that we call VISP, the Via Internet Service Provider. So we are an ISP, right? So now the outage that I caused a few days ago was at our Texas sites. We actually set up a new POP, a new data center, where everybody is now coming in and using that as the point of presence, the internet service for all of the sites in Texas. So what we did a couple days ago was we implemented a new block of public IP addresses. So we were changing all of the sites from their old public IP addresses to their new public IP addresses. So simple change for the most part. It's going in and setting the new public IP, changing all of the NAT commands to use that public IP, changing the access list entries that are set statically for that public IP to a new one, right? It's I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's actually pretty straightforward. So we did that, we implemented it, tested internet access from the site, went to ipchicken.com, and we'll go to Lithuania next. That's nearby, and so we implemented. Went to ipchicken.com to verify that it's the new IP address. We're like, bada bing, done. Well, the next morning, we got a call from the site saying our phones are not working, and we're like, what? Because voice over IP phones are a thing. That's one of the things that we implement for every single one of our sites, and we're like, what's going on? And so we're trying to search, and we're trying to find the different the challenges that could happen with, did we miss a NAT command? Did we miss a access list statement? We're like, no. So long story short, so this outage which is fresh in my mind from about 3 days ago. It was at one of our test sites. It didn't happen at all of our sites because we flipped one site and then we go to all the rest of them. It was because the NAT table maintains entries for devices that are continuing to check in. So here's the, so, hang on, whoa, come back, camera. Whoa, where are you at? There we go. Woo. What caused the outage was we changed the public IP, and for computers testing internet, every single time you open a new web browser or something of that nature, it's going to start a new session, so it goes out on the new IP. Well, these phones were sending little SIP keep alives, bing, 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 that kept the NAT entry that was already there in place, right, on the old public IP, and it didn't pick up the new public IP. So even though we replaced the NAT commands in the configuration, and wow, my camera's all over. Sorry about that. So we replaced the NAT commands in the configuration. The cached entries, the NAT translations, show IP NAT translations, right? They remained for the IP phones on the old public IP. So the solution, obviously, as I'm talking to you now, I'm like, the solution was to clear the NAT table, and then all of the cached entries that hung out on the old public IP went away. Not ShoreTel phones. They were actually Grandstream phones. But yeah, it happens with any phones. Anything that UDP based is maintaining an active connection stuck on the, so simple fix, right? But it's always simple fixes when you're sitting here in 2020 hindsight. When you're sitting there and a site is calling you saying our phone system is down, it's never a simple fix then, because you're in the weeds trying to figure out what did I do wrong. So long story short, we ended up figuring that out, and then as we changed the rest of the sites over, we changed our standard process to become clear the NAT translations after you change the public IP. And let me make sure I mention, this is what causes most outages, is making big changes without a test plan, without a rollback plan. So, man, I'm about to go into my teaching mode, right? Where if you like, for instance, if we would have done that, walking through a little river here. If we would have done that for all of our sites, and the next morning, all of them called in and said, our phone systems are down, crisis, right? So we picked a pilot site and we warned them, hey, you're the first to change over to this new service, blah, 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 blah. And they were okay with that. So that it wasn't unexpected. So, okay. What other outages have I caused? And I would love for you to chat in. I know I'm not going to be able to read it as well when I'm walking. Chat in or comment if you're watching this video later. Eric, great question. I'll talk about that in a second. Of any crazy outages that you've caused, if you don't mind confessing, one of the key things I think in my teaching success has been I'm pretty humble, and I will readily admit that I have caused more outages than probably the average network engineer, right? And so sometimes your ability to swallow your own pride and be like, okay, I did that, is actually first step to fixing the problem. So second outage that I'll throw out there, again, just off the top of my head, is VLAN tags. I know I could probably stop right there, and all of you are like, oh yeah. So when you are implementing new VLANs or changing VLANs or whatever the case is, it's something that you have to do on every switch within the whole site, right? Which could be hundreds, if not thousands, of switches that you're managing. Well, a lot of times, you can have your little check process to do things, but if you miss one switch and one little tag on a trunk port, yeah, Anthony, yep. It wasn't what Anthony is saying, although I have done that as well. But if you miss one VLAN tag on a trunk port, it can easily go unnoticed. And in the case that I'm going to tell you, it was a VLAN tag for the wireless network, right? So again, you're doing it remotely, oftentimes, just changing all these tags, going check. Missed one. Don't know how it was missed. Don't know who missed it. Was working on a team, but the next morning, it showed up as, hey, Wi-Fi is down. Actually, it wasn't the next morning. That's what made it so hard. It was like a couple days later, someone was like, hey, Wi-Fi is down, right? Because that's what gets reported. Wireless is not working. And so you're like, what is going on? And this obviously isn't the VLAN thing, because that was a couple days ago, right? So it was simply a group of wireless access points that no longer had access to the tag. The ports the WAPs were plugged into were tagged, right? The uplink port out of the switch, that's where the tag was missing. So that would be outage number 2. Outage number 3. Now, I saw somebody type in there causing a network loop. I've done that. I've done that plenty. I can't remember the last time I did that though, so I can't give the exact example of that. Morning, Ben. Outage number 3 that I'll tell you about, and I'm honestly not too sure how I would have approached this better, and I would love to hear your perspective. It was a data center rewire to where the data center rack had just become a mess, tangled spaghetti. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was a co-hosted location that just over time, people coming in, going out, the wires were just a mess, right? And so we had decided, let's just redo the entire rack. Let's just go in one night at 9 p.m. I mean, there was other things. We're going to install some servers, oh man, so much stuff that come into my mind of like, here's what you should do, or here's what you should not do. So let me tell you that. We had a whole bunch of stuff planned, and we're like, this should be easy. There's my tip number 1. Nothing is easy when it comes to network engineering. Even the easy stuff that sounds easy is not easy, because there's always like, oh yeah. And you want to get to the point. And that's where I saw earlier cabs, change. We call ours a CRB, change review board, where we have a CRB meeting once a week where everybody submits their changes. Whole panel sits there and talks about it and says, I approve that change. Oh, did you think about this? Everybody's required to make a list of steps. And this is an evolution that we've gone through. So anyway, let me talk about the outage. Then I can talk about my advice on minimizing the outages, just from my own experiences. And so this was a data center rewire where we literally stripped all of the cables out, installed cable management, rearranged the servers, things like that. We had our labeler, we had everything. Started at 9 p.m. the night before. We had scheduled it with the customers. Hey, blah, 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 it's going to be down. We'll be down till midnight was our lofty goal. So there we were at 4 in the morning. The sites were still down. Everything was offline. We had long since passed our outage window, because when you remove the cables for 50 different servers with just throw out 10 VMs per server, with each VM being their own VLAN tag, like that alone is a crazy thing to do in a single outage window, right? Much less 3 hours. So we ripped the whole thing out. You guys know where this is going, right? It's like we've put it all back. Half the servers are online, half of them are offline. We're like, well, didn't you label? I mean, it's 4 in the morning. You've been up all night. You're like, what? I don't even know what's what anymore. You start feeling that you guys know what I'm talking about, that feeling where you're like, could I just walk away from it? If I just walked, like, what's the worst thing they could do to me? Am I going to jail? Are they like, I mean, like, what's that? Like, you start having crazy thoughts when it's 4 in the morning, right? And I see somebody saying, you could have done 25 servers. Yeah, so I'll get there, of course, 20/20 hindsight. But I mean, I'm telling you, like, all sense and reason goes out the window at 4 in the morning when everything's down, or most things are down, and I just thought of another outage. I'll tell you about that in a second. Okay. So I'll have outage number 4, make my walk a little longer, and then it was also very recent. So I'll tell you about that. Okay, but 4 in the morning, all sense is out the window, and you're like, I'm scrambled eggs, right? And so you're just desperate. You get through it, right? You always figure it out. You get there, but it's just not fun. And it's, I mean, the good network engineers, which I'd like to throw myself in the pot, but I'm always still learning. But the good network engineers learn, they get better, and I wish I could train people on that. That's why I do a lot of these live walks, just where I just walk and talk. There's no training that can prepare you for that. Yeah, I've taught people best practices for years, and you just, when you're there, all of it's gone. So it's like, I'm sure military training could prepare you for that or something. Cause anyhow, so okay, last outage I'll tell you about. This happened 4 months ago, something like that. So, you'll have to, if anybody is here that loves Ubiquiti or Ubiquiti themselves, because I know they follow me on a lot of things, my apologies. It's not your fault, but it is. So 3-4 months ago, as we were doing a major upgrade to Visp, what I was talking about earlier, the VIA ISP, I decided it would be a great idea to use these Edge Router Infinity devices for our BGP carrier uplinks, right? So when you set up an ISP, all an ISP is nowadays is a bunch of other ISPs that come into a common point, and you provide that to your customers, right? There's my oversimplified view of what an ISP is. So I thought, let's use Ubiquiti Edge routers for the uplinks to all of the other carriers that we're using, right? And so I did. So we went in. This was probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night. We went in and remove the old devices, put these new devices in, set up the neighbor relationships, and almost everything worked, except I would say 2 or 3 different blocks of public IP addresses just didn't work. And we were sitting there, and of course, those 2 or 3 blocks of public IP addresses is a whole bunch of customers. So we're like, okay, obviously this isn't flying. So we're going there, we're pulling out our hair. What? This is simple. Why is this not working? And one of the things that you get used to as a network engineer, unlike living in the world of Microsoft, no slam intended, but you get used to things just working, right? Because you're like, okay, if it's not working, it's something in my configuration, because most of the time you don't have to deal with like, oh, just reboot. A reboot will fix. If a reboot fixes it in the world of network engineering, something's very wrong, right? And so anyway, we're pulling our hair out. Like, what's the deal? It's like 3 a.m. again, and we're like, okay, maybe we roll back. And I'm like, no, we're not going to roll back. We've been here, because rolling back is the worst thing, because you're like, I've invested. It's like investing in Bitcoin when it's at its peak, and the next day it's like crash, right? That's what it's like when you're rolling. You're like, I've just wasted all of this effort. You don't want to roll back, right? So we're sitting there, and long story short, turned out that there is a bug in these Ubiquiti routers. So I'll let you know if you ever decide to use an edge router as a BGP device. They have a bug with the null route. Typically, when you take a big subnet, right, in BGP, and you use that internally, you have all these little subnets, right? So when you advertise your big subnet to all these other carriers, you have to advertise the big one. You can't, what am I trying to say? You can't advertise all the little ones, because the internet doesn't like that. All the ISPs. Yeah, good point. Don't use Ubiquiti for edge routing ever. I'm not going to go that far, but I will say after that night, okay. So what we found is so the strategy is you put in a null route, right, in your configuration, and that's the route that you advertise up. So there is a bug in Ubiquiti edge routers. They still haven't fixed it. I reported it, and they said, thank you. Okay. And I think the main reason why is Ubiquiti has chosen to focus on their Unify line, and I think the edge router has like one guy left supporting them. So if you create a null route and advertise that, but you have interfaces that connect to networks in that null route, it will actually cause them to be unreachable. It won't mark them as unreachable. Everything will look fine, but that null route, so It always should prefer. So here's the summary. Here's the bug report. If you want to officially, you create a null route. The router will prefer the null route over the directly connected interfaces. That's the bug. If you want it in a nutshell. But that was an outage. We went past our window on implementation because of a bug, and it was that moment where I said, okay, the money that I saved using Ubiquiti edge routers over some Cisco routers that I know would not have this bug. Like, how many people are using Ubiquiti edge routers for their carrier uplinks? One, me, and maybe two. Some guy in El Salvador, I think, was like not many people do that. So there's a price that you pay when you use. I will say, I'm not saying don't use non-Cisco equipment. What I'm saying is there's a price that you pay, and it's not going to show up on a price tag. The organization will still be quote unquote happy that you save them money, but that soon fades when your outage window is past the amount of time and things like that. Like that's when you're like, okay, I paid the price. Me, Jeremy Chara, paid the price for going with a non-Cisco, a non-enterprise grade line to do something like that, and it'll make you ask a lot of questions. So that's the we'll call it the fourth outage, and that's like within the last 6 months. I could probably think about two more. It's not, and when I say outage, what outages have you caused? I'm not talking about everything's down, it's a disaster, you're a complete failure as a network engineer, although that happens. It's oftentimes so let me bleed it, and I know, sorry. So let me finish talking. I know there's a feed in itself. Let me finish talking, and then I'll respond to a lot of the little comments I see coming in right here. So let me give you some points of learning. I think I just gave you one. When you choose to go with equipment that is not enterprise grade or up to the standard, there is a price that you will pay. It will happen sooner or later, where it's just, vendor X has to grow themselves and you're helping them grow, right? They should give you a discount when you find stuff like that. So yes, I see somebody saying Cisco. Yes, that's what you get when you pay 4 times as much for a router as vendor X. Is you're getting a truly tried, and you also get a team. I'm not saying Cisco doesn't have bugs, but just know that it's going to be a lot fewer and a lot less major bugs than you would have in another vendor. So okay, second point of learning. This is the way. I was seriously watching Mandalorian last night. My wife was sick, and she's like, "Let's just watch that." And I put that on, and that's stuck in my head as well. I'm still on the first 3 episodes. So, okay, ADD. So, second point of learning when you're doing this, take bite size changes. Like for instance, I told you we are implementing a new POP over in Texas for VISP, a lot of what we're doing over there. The initial thought was, okay, let's implement this and let's set up, hot failover to where we've got, kind of like an SD-WAN style deployment between our VISP connection and cable modems. I mean, we had all these great plans. And so, huge point on stopping outages is no, let's just take something small. Because nothing is easy. That's my third point. I'll come to that in just a moment. Nothing is easy. But last night we finished up changing all the public IP addresses. One small piece of implementing this massive point of presence at a data center in Texas. We just changed the public IP addresses, and you know what? Cumulatively over the weekend, it probably took us 6 hours to do that. Shouldn't have, but it did, because small bite-sized things are just a better way. This is the way. That should be our theme. This is the way, as everybody's typing it. We should, kind of like the Mandalorians have their way. We should have like the network. There's something to this. Point number 4, meet with people. It all makes sense in your head when you're thinking about changing something in a network environment. Oh yeah, it's just this. And no, know that managers are not who you want to meet with most of the time, because managers are like, get it done. Like it's a checkbox, whether it be, project managers or like project management is great. And I'm not slamming project management at all. Like it's critical, it's essential, but they're not going to get into the technical details. They don't want to, and they shouldn't. They're not going to get into the step-by-step or the plan or thing like change public IP addresses is a line on their Excel spreadsheet, or whatever project management tool they're using, right? So meet with other people that are technical, or if you don't have other people that you work with at your organization, jump on a forum, go on Reddit, do something like that, and get their advice, get their perspective on what you're doing. Hey, I'm planning to change public IP addresses. Here's my plan. I mean, put some time into it. Don't just like throw out changing public IPs. What do I need? Like put your plan. Like what's your thought on there, and get some feedback. I mean, people will ask. Oh man. It happened to me. So I'm going to tell you about a coffee outage I caused. I have a really nice espresso maker, probably more money than I ever wanted to spend in coffee, but I will say if I total up all the Starbucks trips it saved me, it probably hasn't paid for itself, but it was a good intention. So I have this great espresso maker at home, and it just stopped working. And so long story short, it's great enough that I called in the company. They're like, hey, we'll do a video sharing session with you so their techs can troubleshoot. And they're like, okay, first off, is the power switch in the back on? And I'm like, power switch in the back? Like in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh no, it's happening to me right now. It's happening. This is happening. I was like, I didn't even know there was a power switch in the back. I'm like, I didn't even know it was there, but it, of course it shouldn't be not. So long story short, I moved it out and the power switch was off. It was one of those things, right? Like to where when you're so annoyed when somebody's like, is your computer plugged in? Like it was that kind of feel, and it happened to me, and the power switch was off, right? It must have happened. I had some friends over. I had to move the coffee machine out, right? And I bet you I just hit the anyway. I'm making excuses for myself, but my point in telling you that is somebody asking you the dumb questions will often, I mean, I will tell you, sometimes my wife is, it's horrible. Like if she, like I ask dumb questions, no, like the non-technical, sometimes just running things by your wife. Like, okay, here's my plan. Hey, she's the number one. Hey, do you got everything you need? I'm like, yeah, I got everything. What about your, like all the Ethernet cable? Like she knows just because she's been with me long enough, all the stuff that I should, oh yeah, dang it. Forgot about it. And so bouncing those things off of other people. So, all right, I'm home. I should start my day, but let me scroll back through some of the questions. Man, there's almost 100 people here. Thanks, guys. Thanks for jumping on the live stream. Love to hear. So I know I can't read them because it would be too long, but I'd love if you could, in the comments on this post, just put in your best network outage. I'm sure we could all learn from it. Mr. Labman put in, tell us about the hospital. Yeah. And so I personally have never, I take that back. I've done some stuff in a hospital, but I haven't ever done anything that I would say could cause a network outage. But there was a spanning tree loop. This is one of the stories I told in one of the videos that I created long ago, where literally a spanning tree loop, essentially spanning tree breaking down loop, took the whole hospital online. And I'll tell you, I was talking to my brother. My brother works for me at VIA, and I was telling, we were having just shoot the breeze conversation.